Hello, welcome back to Desperate Living as we continue to plough through new box set releases of classic titles. Another second sight release here, the magnificent Reanimator. Be taking a look at the box and what you get in it in a few moments, but first of all, let's discuss the actual film.
Herbert West is at the top of his class in medical school.
How can you teach such drivel? These people are here to learn, and you're closing their minds before they even have a chance. What are you?
He's brilliant, but a little weird.
I've broken the 6 to 12 minute barrier. I've conquered brain death.
His experiments have always been unorthodox.
It was dead.
But lately they're getting out of hand. And he's just made a discovery that could wake up the dead.
Herbert West has affected reanimation in dead animal tissue.
What are you thinking? How do you feel?
You? 15 cc's of reagent being administered.
Once you wake up the dead, you've got a real mess on your hands.
Herbert, you're insane! Now what happened?
I had to kill him!
He's dead?
Not anymore.
Herbert West brought a lot of dead people back to life, and not one of them showed any appreciation. H.P. Lovecraft's classic tale of horror, Reanimator.
Mr. West.
You'll never get credit for my discovery. Who's going to believe a talking head? Get a job in a sideshow.
It will scare you to pieces.
I first saw Reanimator on its original, heavily cut UK theatrical release, where it was memorably double-billed with Ghoulies, and while enjoying it, I didn't at that point consider it to be particularly exceptional. I think part of that was certainly down to the censorship, which was very heavy-handed and crudely executed. This is a film where cuts are always going to be very damaging, and in this particular case were made worse by the clumsy way in which they were done, with no effort to hide the fact that large chunks had been suddenly and brutally excised from the movie. I think you would have done a smoother job just having a kind of pause and record button on a VHS player, frankly. But I soon realised that my initial opinion of the film had underestimated it considerably. This is a movie that definitely improves with repeated viewing, is continually watchable, and certainly one of the best horror films of the 1980s. A delirious, fast-paced exercise in unashamed excess that nevertheless has a genuine sense of style and an intellectual underpinning that lifts it far beyond the other horror comedies of the time. This is not a typical 80s film in that way. In fact, seen now, it's notable that the film isn't really playing for laughs, even if it is tongue-in-cheek. The movie presents itself and works as a straight horror film in a way that few of its contemporaries managed to do. It's also the movie that introduced Jeffrey Combs as a horror icon, his scene-stealing performance as the fanatical Herbert West being genuinely superb. We first see West in a pre-credit sequence where something very horrible happens to a professor in Zurich, and immediately he's up there with the best of the mad scientists. Ruthless, obsessive and arrogant. We then cut to Miskatonic University, where West is enrolled as a new student and immediately butts heads with Dr. Carl Hill, played by David Gale, the seedy and plagiarising autonomy teacher who he accuses of teaching out-of-date information, which is true. Naturally, this riles up Hill no end, and he agitates to have West dismissed from the university. Complicating things is the fact that West has moved in with fellow student Dean Kane, played by Bruce Abbott, who's in a relationship with Megan Halsey, Barbara Crampton, who's the daughter of the Dean, played by Robert Sampson, and also is the object of Dr. Hill's lustful desires. So far, so soap opera, I guess. But things take a twisted turn when Kane is sucked into West's semi-successful experiments in bringing back the dead to life. A technique that works, but leaves the Reanimator dead as drooling idiots or violent psychopaths. When Hill discovers West's work, he determines to steal it, only to end up decapitated by West. But of course this isn't going to stop it, as West rather foolishly decides to see if he can revive single body parts, namely Dr. Hill's severed head. This he does successfully, but in doing so, unleashes a monster. This is a film that's deliriously mad. Reanimator is a joyous work of bad taste and ferocious horror, a film that positively challenges the viewer to complain about the plot inconsistencies, ludicrousness. I mean, how does Hill's head manage to talk, for instance? There are no vocal cords. And its gleeful offensiveness. Although based surprisingly faithfully on one of H.P. Lovecraft's pulpier works, it really owes more to EC Comics visually. This is an extraordinarily vibrant film. It's full of greens and blues and reds. And also stylistically. Certainly the unashamed tastelessness of the story feels like something from a comic book. And when you watch it now, you genuinely wonder how anyone could have ever taken it so utterly seriously as to want to cut it. But they did, and it wasn't just the British Board of Film Classification. The film was released unrated in the US after being threatened with an X, and for a long time uncut copies were on the UK Customs hit list of forbidden films. The first DVD that I owned of the film was actually a US import, not one that I'd brought into the country, but instead a copy sold in a Nottingham electrical shop that had a handful of imported discs to go along with their multi-region players. I always wonder if they knew how risky it was to sell this particular film, which seems to have triggered authority figures in ways that few other movies of the era, and this was, after all, post-video nasties, had done. In fact, Reanimator challenges you to be shocked, as it throws around the gore. Whenever you think you've seen it all, the film pulls something new from the bad taste bag, leading to the spectacular, gloriously tasteless final act that has a naked Barbara Crampton being sexually abused by Hill's severed head. One of the finest moments of sheer, unashamed offensiveness in cinema history, and the film is a frenzy of gore, naked bodies, action, and snappy dialogue.
You'll never get credit for my discovery. Who's going to believe a talking head get a job in a sideshow?
Surely must be one of the best lines of dialogue ever written. But to concentrate simply on the film's deliberately transgressive elements would be to underestimate it. This is far from being some mere splatter extravaganza. It's actually a great film in itself. Dennis Paoli's screenplay is backed with sharp dialogue and well-drawn characters, and Stuart Gordon directs the film with a real sense of style, allowing the characters to develop and the story to unfold, while also keeping it moving at a fast pace that never flags. This is a film without an ounce of fat on it. Gordon's also sensible enough to allow the ludicrous nature of the events to provide the humour, and so otherwise keeps the film on a straight line, never aiming for cheap laughs that it doesn't need. He certainly helped in this by a cast to play it soberly. As West, Combs is fantastic. Tight-lipped, wide-eyed, driven but controlled. He resembles Anthony Perkins, but thankfully avoids Perkins' later habits of going wildly over the top. It's a tight performance that dominates the film, and it's unsurprising that it made the actor into an instant horror icon. But he's matched by the rest of the cast. Gale playing the true villain of the piece, because at least West is trying to do something that might benefit mankind, is fantastically slimy and sleazy, making him a perfect foil for West, while Barbara Crampton is excellent in what could have been a fairly throwaway role. And her willingness to go all the way is admirable. Abbott probably has the most difficult task, of course, because he's effectively playing straight man to the rest of the cast, so it's to his credit that he's able to bring some sense of character and humanity to his role. It might seem odd for me to call a cult favourite like Reanimator underrated, but I think as a film, quite possibly is. As loved as this film is, I'm not sure that people give it enough credit for being a great movie. Not just a great horror movie, but one of the most inventive, original and stylish films of the 1980s. But that's exactly what it is. A glorious, witty, deranged exercise in cinema extremity that still holds up well even now. So that's the movie. What about the new box set? Well, as you can see, it's a fairly chunky package, similar in size to the David Cronenberg films, The Brood and Scanners, that Second Sight also released, and which I've reviewed. Put the link up here. It's got the slipcover that has all the details, which you can then, of course, remove and have a more unabashed sleeve, if that's what you like to do, and that is what I like to do. And let's have a look at the contents. First of all, we have, as always, the postcards. This is all artwork, and they've already popped out for once. So I was going to say I'm not going to take them out of the little envelope, but there we go. They've done so. Let's have a see. It's kind of interesting. Is this what a series of alternative sleeves, I suppose? I'm curious. I'm not quite sure how relevant it is. If you've been watching any of my previous pieces, you'll know that I find these all a bit pointless. But now we're going to get into the meat of things with the book, and once again, it's a substantial volume. Page count comes in at 114. So, as I say continually about this kind of thing, you know, the book itself is a standalone item that you would certainly be interested in having if you were a fan of the movie, never mind the new edition. So obviously I haven't read this. There's an interesting selection of articles, but it looks fantastic. Skim through. It also smells really nice, actually. It's got that just printed freshness about it. And then we come on to the film itself, where we have the 3 discs. So this is, of course, the UHD edition. Comes with a pair of Blu-rays, and you can see that this is the artwork that's on all those postcards. So a really nice package, up there with the other Second Sight titles that I've got. I mean, Second Sight have done an interesting thing, that they're releasing a lot of what we would call more recent films, but when I say more recent, you know, they're still quite often well over 10 years old, but not the collector titles from the 1970s, 1980s that you might expect to be seeing on other labels. And they're releasing them in these kind of editions, the beautiful box sets with books, with plenty of extra material. That's genuinely impressive. They've obviously found a niche. I recall when Second Sight were first issuing a lot of this stuff, they issued things like Basket Case. I think they did Reanimator, they did From Beyond, a few others in what were sort of standard editions, but also had plenty of extras on them, but were being pretty much overlooked. I think the label itself was being overlooked to a large extent in favour of the likes of Arrow, Severin in the US, you know, of the big boutique labels. And I never quite understood why. They certainly seem to have now, you know, found their place and are doing these gorgeous editions. If we look at what's on the disc, plenty of audio commentary tracks with the cast, with the crew, and lots of stuff with the actual filmmakers, which is always good. You know, it's always nice to have people who were involved in the movie involved in the disc as well. And of course, sets like this have to step up, because by this point, I imagine everybody has a copy of Reanimator, everybody who's interested in it, whether you've got it on Blu-ray, whether you've got it on DVD, you need to be given a reason to upgrade. I mean, you may well, if you're a fan of the film, have owned this on several different formats by this stage, and why would you want to buy yet another? You might want to just upgrade it to UHD, because it is, like I said, it's a beautiful looking film, and so the better the quality, arguably the better it's going to look. But realistically, I think if you want to upgrade a film, you need a good reason beyond just picture quality, because I don't think UHD is that much of a step up from what we see on Blu-ray on most televisions. You can argue about that in the comments if you want. I don't notice that much of a difference, and sometimes the difference is that the UHD actually looks worse because it's just too clean and too smooth. But anyway, my point is that sets like this make that step up worthwhile, make it a worthy thing to think, yeah, I'm going to get yet another version of this film. When you look at this package, it's gorgeous, and when you look at these, a shelf full of these is much more impressive than a shelf full of standard Blu-rays or standard DVDs. So if you like Reanimator, and if you don't like Reanimator, I'm not quite sure why you're here, then this is absolutely a must-have item, I think. Forget what you've already got and snap this up immediately. So I'd be interested to hear what you think of Reanimator. Did any of you ever see that UK cut version, either theatrically or on VHS? It was the version that was around for a long time. Or indeed, did you have problems importing copies of the film? When I said that UK Customs took an offence to the movie, I mean they really took an offence to the movie and treated it as if it was on the same level as hardcore porn when that was still illegal. Anyway, let us know in the comments what you think, and if you've enjoyed this video and want to see more of the same kind of thing, then give it a like, subscribe to Desperate Living if you've yet to do so, and support us in any way you can. Everything helps keep the channel going and keep me doing what I'm doing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.